allowed me to feel okay, even though I was still fearful. I was still scared of what I was going through. But, it's a 24-hour program. It's a day-by-day thing. I'm going to get through today, and then I'm going to worry about tomorrow when tomorrow comes. And that's kind of how I plowed through it. But I've had support all along the way from the program, from my sponsor, Marty, who has been like a second father to me. And my good friend Greg, who I grew up with down in Wildwood Crest, who stayed by my side. And let me say my ex-wife, who stayed by my side. Even though she did divorce me, she still was all for this. And truthfully, she is the one thing that pushed me to that edge, where I knew it was time. And don't let me forget for 1 minute my daughter Alexa and Lauren. Both of my daughters, again, that morning I was in my truck and I was thinking about a really bad thought and looking up at that pictures of my kids and saying, this isn't how it's going to end, man. It's just not going to end this way. And I pray every day that, this reaches somebody who may be thinking on those lines and say, you know what? It doesn't have to end this way. I don't have to get off the elevator on the ground floor. I can get off now and go get some help that I need.
Yeah, I mean, and you never know, but wouldn't it be great if you could just passively help one person a day?
I hope by doing this, like, again, as we talked about, I was reluctant early on to do the video. I was like, wow, I'm really, going to put myself out there. And then I thought, well, I've done that. Now, being approached with the radio show, and I thought, well, it's just another avenue to reach out. And I've already put myself out there. And it's really not about me, man. It's about getting other people help.
You're just a vessel for the message.
I'm just spreading the word, you know what I mean? And I really pray that, that is what happens, that some poor soul that is listening to this says, you know what, it's time, and I can get help.
Well, and that's the thing that, they raise everybody, you're unique and blah, blah, blah. And yes, you are unique, but we're all unique in some way, but we're not unique as a species. There's no problem that hasn't been dealt with by somebody else. You're not alone. There's somebody else that's been through it that can help you and make it a little easier. Maybe it's not exactly the same, but you're not alone. You don't have to fight everything alone. And I when Michelle came on here, she was nervous to come on the radio. I think radio is a little easier, because it's not, it's like the first thing you said, is this live? Because that puts pressure on it.
Well, with the video, there was cameras like here, like right in your face a couple times.
It's very stressful.
But again, Glenn made me feel really welcomed, and all his people that were there, with their different jobs, made me feel very welcome and comfortable, as I feel here. And it it just helps. It helps, be to stay calm and get the message out there that needs to get out.
Well, it's funny how I pay attention to things, and I it's just nature work. I pay attention to everything except for important things, like I don't remember birthdays and things like that, and I forget when I'm quizzed. I get in trouble all the time, But when I was talking to you, I noticed as I glanced at your car, saw the volcano thing. And then I saw the seashells and the clam shells on the floor. And
you're very observant.
Yeah. I saw the shells on the floor. And then we ended up talking about, because there was so little to do in this town, what we would do is we would go down the road to what we called the Clam Factory.
Yeah.
And then we ended up talking, and you were from right down the road there because those shells reminded me of the Clam Factory. And the Clam Factory is not a euphemism, okay? It's the Clam Factory. It was the only thing to do. There was a factory, and there was piles of clam shells, and there were seagulls on the piles.
Yep.
That was it.
That's exactly right.
You'd be in shorts and you would play on razor sharp clam shells in blazing sun, and that was our internet.
Pretty much. Growing up in the Crust and offshore, our feet looked like they were put through meat grinders because most of us would wear flip-flops if we were lucky, or most of the day spend in bare feet.
Yeah.
Walk to the beach, whatever, When we lived in the Crust, it was, I don't know, maybe 5 blocks to the beach, but you're walking over concrete and, so your feet were like, calloused, hardened, from all that walking over the beach sand and the concrete and, but, like I said, we had a good life.
It built character.
It did. And we were, back then you were taught that, you know what I mean? Like you were taught to go to work every day and you were taught to do the right thing. I think, we talked about these kids these days, and I don't want to sound like an old man, but it's just they have this, it's this, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. There's no such thing as the word no. If they want it, they get it. And, I thank God every day that it was just alcohol for me. I see what you talked about is these young kids, what they're up against now, and the opiates and all the other stuff that comes along with it. And it's hardcore. It's really, really hardcore.
They've got a lot of pressures on them, and I don't think, and I'm not trying to devalue them or anything, so don't picket or protest. Not that I care, but I don't think that they have the strength of character to deal with. They have more pressures and they have less strength of character because of having been tested. And I'm not talking, and maybe I am talking about, I describe to people different things when I was younger, and they look at me and reel back in horror like that was abuse. That was what you were going through. That was just life back then,
Right.
Back in Whitesboro, I remember when they put the playground in, and they the first playground was an all wooden playground, and they had a wooden sliding board there that was not properly shellacked. So that was, you haven't come of age until you've gotten a splinter right up Main Street, and Main Street was where the playground was. So that's not a euphemism either. Yeah. And then after that maimed enough children, they put in a steel sliding board with no canopy over it that was razor sharp, that sat in the sun and
give you third-degree burns.
Third-degree burns. It was just like there was bacon by the time you got to the bottom of the sliding board. You would just get burned.
Yep.
And then when you got burned back then, what your parents did was they would put butter on it, which we know is the exact wrong thing to do now. But they would just baste us like they were preparing a meal. And I think what it was that every generation has a certain level of incompetence, and I think that somebody said butter was the thing to put on burns back then, and everybody started doing it. And I think it came from, it was the only thing somebody had in the house at some point, and they just smeared it on.
They used to come through the streets of Wildwood Crest with a mosquito sprayer.
Oh my God.
We used to run through clouds of that stuff.
Yeah.
God knows the chemicals that were in that.
We chased it like
and
it was
we ran through it as kids. Yeah. And then, that was the next thing that came up the street, is the ice cream truck. Or on every other corner in Wildwood Crest back in the day, there was an ice cream store. And then there was the Big Top, which was ice cream and the batting cages. Like that's where we would go to get our early batting cage, because that was like, wow, a batting cage when you were growing up was like, that was the top of the line. Like you couldn't believe it. And it was just simpler times back then, growing up. These kids, what they see now, what they've seen the last 20 years is just absolutely incredible.
And they have different strains and And I just don't think they're prepared to deal with them, because I think that the parents raised them and said, I want my kids to have it better than me. And what they should have said is, I want my kids to be safe and have a fair chance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they made them too comfortable. And you've got kids that have 50-inch TVs in their bedrooms, and their first phone costs more than my first 3 cars.
Yeah.
And things like that. And I think that they don't learn to not have something. And, and I'm not saying that we need to regress back to where we're running behind a truck, taking in toxic chemicals, and that's our idea of summer euphoric fun.
Yeah. Maybe that's where it started to go wrong.
Yeah, that could be a
Don't
problem.
get me wrong. Our parents would yell at us, get out of that stuff.
Get away from that truck. You don't
get
know
inside until that stuff clears, Meanwhile, it's coming in the windows, so who knows? Who knows what that caused, or what got, hopefully down the line it doesn't cause any damage. But
well, I remember chasing that like dogs chasing. It was like a thing to chase a truck.
Pretty much how it was.
And they'd yell, get away from that truck. You don't know what's in there.
Yeah.
That thing was just blowing out toxic.
Yep. It was an old army Jeep that would blow out this fog.
DDT stuff.
God knows what was in those chemicals, but it was quite a time growing up there.
And now they don't want, kids can't go in the sun too long or whatever. And
we were in it for 8 hours a day.
Yeah, we were getting burned on sliding boards, splinters the size of my forearm inserted in places I don't want splinters to be.
I remember being 10, 12 years old and saying, hey, Mom, I'm going down to the beach to meet so-and-so, and we're going to go surfing. And we would be paddling 100, 200, 100 yards out. And just down the beach by ourselves, And now you just don't do that. You know what I mean? These are the things you don't do. No. There's just so many more things to be concerned about. You know what I mean? It's just a much more harsher world. But I don't think that lends itself to more or less addiction. I think some people get to addiction on their own recourse, and other people are just born into it. They just have the genes. I really feel like I had the genes. I feel like that I was destined to be an alcoholic. I do, because I just think that it was on both sides of the family. Mom, dad, sister, brother, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandmother, grandfathers. It was everywhere. So I just think it was part of the plan. Like this is part of the plan for me now, to reach out and get people help that may not want to ask for it, and may hear this and say, you know what, maybe it is time that I get help with it.
Well, even if you argued and said, well, I don't believe in genetic predisposition or whatever, environmentally, it was there because of the amount of people. You just had so many people around you that
that's how it was. I mean, and both, again, going back to family, we drank at weddings, we drank at funerals, we drank if it was sunny, we drank if it was cloudy, we drank if it was snowing. Oh, there's a snowstorm. Make sure you have some booze on hand. And growing up at the shore, that's really all there was to do.
Yeah, it's party.
You know what I mean? It was party time, especially during the summer. You know what I mean? That's what people come down there to do. They come down there to get rid of all the winter doldrums and cut loose for a while, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. But there's just some people that are predisposed to that going wrong. It just goes wrong. And somewhere along the line, like I said, I crossed the line. I don't know where that was, but it clearly, negatively affected people around me, and most importantly, my family, my wife, my kids.
Are you friends with your ex? You said you.
I am, actually. Yeah, we do. We actually get along pretty well, and I have 2 beautiful kids that just are awesome. Straight A students, and
how old?
One's doing very well with softball, about to get a scholarship for softball, and my youngest is quite the stage and dance actress, singer, however you want to describe it. But so proud of them because they've been able to muscle through this rough part of their lives, no thanks to me, and still love me through it.
Well, you know, it's funny though. Many friendship has been saved by divorce. It's
well, that's a whole, you know, another subject. But I mean, the bottom line is, you know, if it wasn't for